folks, how's everybody doing? I'm still up here at Dartmouth, up in New Hampshire. I'll be going back to New York tomorrow, so everything will get back on track. I apologize if my emails and updates have been coming out a little slow, but I've just been busy up here, and I'll be back in New York. But in any case, I want to talk about not so much the market today. I want to talk about, again, more geopolitics, although it does have, and it will have an impact on the market. It'll have an impact on our lives. So, I mean, the market is almost secondary here. But what I am alluding to, what I want to talk about, is the rapidly deteriorating relations between the U.S. and Russia. Now, I've been around. I lived through the Cold War. I was a kid during the Cuban Missile Crisis, but all my life I have, and there have been times when U.S.-Russia relations were not that great, but I have never seen it the way it has devolved into now. I mean, even in times in the past when it was bad, there was always a level of professional respect or communication or language, whether that was diplomats talking to each other or even president to president, even during the Cold War. But now, if you look at the way the two countries just speak to each other, I mean, this is it's gotten very, very aggressive, very belligerent, and very serious. Now, if we go over what has transpired, and first, if I could step back a second, I have to say that, I supported Trump and I voted for Trump. The preeminent reason, the number one reason, primo reason, first reason for me, bar none, that I voted for Trump was his desire to normalize relations with Russia. At least that's what he said all during the campaign. That, to me, was the most important thing. All of his other policies and proposals, some were good, some were bad. But to me, if the U.S. and Russia ever got into a war, which I felt was possible under a Hillary Clinton presidency, then everything else is completely secondary. I mean, you're really talking about a situation where you have the potential that all life on Earth as we know it ceases to exist, okay? Now everything else is secondary compared to that. And I thought it would be a great thing for the world if U.S. and Russia got along. But it has not gone in that direction. And not even close. I mean, the neocons, the warmongers have completely, populated or have taken over the administration. And I saw this and I spoke about this early on, right after he got elected, and he started to make his cabinet appointments. And, I was very disappointed to see this Mattis general, this Mad Dog. That's his nickname, Mad Dog. How do you appoint a defense secretary named Mad Dog? Anyone who has a nickname named Mad Dog is certainly not the kind of guy you would think was going to be even-keeled or diplomatic in his dealings, strategic. Mad Dog, come on. So you had that. You had the situation with Flynn, who I liked. Flynn was, he had relations with Russia, and the way Trump, that whole thing, how he was outed, and then Trump threw him under the bus, and this guy McMaster who came in, and he's also a very anti-Russian guy, and the whole bunch of them. All right, what's his name at the CIA? I forget his name now. Anyway. So the situation has really devolved. It's a very bad relationship right now, very bad relationship. And Trump, because of these investigations into his supposed collusion with the Russians in the election and the Russian hacking, where they've been 8 months now looking into this and never finding anything, he is, you could see it. The guy's like walking on eggshells, like he doesn't want to say anything that would make it look like he's favorable towards Russia. So this is just, it's worsening the relationship. It's allowing these hawks and these hardliners to really take control of policy. And so now we get to Syria. We get to Syria where Russia and Syria are fighting ISIS. That is an actual goal that they have, these terrorists. And by the way, let's be honest about this. ISIS is a creation of the United States of America. It's a creation of the CIA and our intelligence community and the Defense Department. It is ISIS as a result of, and I should say it's a creation of, the State Department under Hillary Clinton, in all of our, regime change operations, the fact that we overthrew governments in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Yemen. You get rid of these hardline rulers and you create a vacuum, and that vacuum is filled by extremists and terrorists, and we use them, we train them. This is not conjecture on my part or speculation, or I'm just talking out my ass. This is known that we fund and we arm and we back these groups, and we use them as proxy fighters. In Syria right now, we are using these groups. Why do you think Obama never took care of ISIS? I mean, it's nothing. The Russians came in there, and ISIS has been reduced to a fraction of what it was, and it would be gone if it were not for the United States entering into the whole situation on the side of these so-called moderate rebels. They're not moderate rebels, all right? These are terrorists who are being used by our government to try to overthrow Assad, which is not going to happen now. Assad is completely protected by the Russians, and he's not going anywhere. So, we have this situation where Russia came at the request of the Syrian government to come in and help them. So Russia didn't just come in unannounced, uninvited. They came at the request of the Syrian government of Assad to come in and help them fight these terrorists who had taken over large portions of the country. The Russians were successful in taking out a lot of these fighters and reducing their size. And as I said, probably would have eliminated them by now, but then the United States got involved backing the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces. There's no such thing as the Syrian Democratic Force. The United States was not invited to come into Syria. The United States unilaterally said, we are just going to go into Syria, and screw you, there's nothing you could do. That's an invasion of a sovereign state. Then we had this situation the other day where the United States shoots down a Syrian plane that was fighting ISIS, that was destroying ISIS, under a ridiculous claim that it was endangering the coalition forces. How do you have coalition forces in a country where you were not asked to come in the first place? Is there any respect of sovereignty here? All right. And the great hypocrisy of my country, America, United States, is that yesterday Trump meets with the Ukrainian president Poroshenko, and I'll get into that in a second, and standing there with Mattis, Mad Dog, and the rest of his crew saying, we stand behind you or next to you, Ukraine, in the protection of your sovereignty. Here is the United States, a country that invaded Syria now, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen now, who knows how many countries in Latin America, Grenada, Panama. The question is, who haven't we invaded? All right? And we stand there, all sanctimonious, in a monumental display of hypocrisy, saying we stand for the sovereignty of nations, and we will stand by Ukraine. You want to talk about Ukraine? Let's talk about Ukraine, because it is always falsely and ridiculously painted as an example of Russian aggression. The United States backed a coup in Ukraine that overthrew the democratically elected government there, which they ended up installing a neo-Nazi regime, all right? In Crimea, where we say it was taken by the Russians. It wasn't taken by the Russians. There was a vote, a referendum, which was an authorized referendum by the Ukrainian government, had already given permission to Crimea if one day they decided to hold that vote. Crimea decided to hold that vote, and let's understand something, that for 200 years, Crimea was a part of Russia, and who lives there is mostly ethnic Russians. Crimea decided to have that vote when they saw a coup taking place in their country, which overthrew the democratically elected president of that country, who happened to be pro-Russian, and seeing a neo-Nazi fascist government installed which was anti-Russian. Now, wouldn't you decide to rejoin your old country when you see your current situation collapsing around you in a violent coup? I mean, come on. It was natural for them to want to do that. There was no invasion of Crimea as it is always portrayed in the fake news and the propaganda that comes out of Washington. So he stands next to Poroshenko saying that we stand by your sovereignty when the United States overthrew the democratically elected president of Ukraine. All right, that's point number two. You know what, folks? For those of you, and some of you gotten upset at me because I'm taking this anti-American stance. Let me tell you something. For those of you who think you're so rah-rah, gung-ho American and you're such great Americans. I lived in Europe for 10 years. And in that 10-year period, if someone had come up to me and been disrespectful of my country or spoke bad about my country, I'd be right in their face defending the United States, okay? And telling everybody how great this country was. But I don't know what happened, because something happened after that time that I had been there. And it's something that probably has been in the works for a long time. But we have become the most hypocritical nation on earth. Like I said before, what country haven't we invaded? That is the question you really have to ask. And we stand up there on the world stage, all sanctimonious, saying, hey, you got to respect another country's sovereignty. This is, you know something? We almost went to nuclear war in 1962 when the Russians put missiles in Cuba. Okay, that almost ended up in nuclear war. I remember that. And now we're talking about a situation where the United States, via NATO, its NATO partners and allies, is surrounding Russia with ballistic missiles capable of taking out Russia's first strike defense. In other words, effectively making it so that Russia has no capability to either launch a first strike or to retaliate. What do you think would happen? How long would it take for the United States to react if Russia put missiles on the border of Mexico and Canada, completely surrounding the United States? How long do you think it would take the United States to react in a situation like that? I'll tell you how long. Probably a nanosecond. That's about it. 2 nanoseconds at the most, all right? Yet that is exactly what we're doing, and we're talking about sovereignty, about respecting sovereignty. I mean, folks, this is a joke. So they keep pushing. Washington keeps pushing. The situation keeps getting worse and worse. The language is deteriorating. There is a lack of respect. And when that happens, it's kind of like the schoolyard. You know, first it's like, fuck you. Oh, yeah, fuck you. Then the pushing starts. Then the next thing you know, you're going at it. All right? We're going at it. This is the thing we got to be paying attention to right now. This is the thing we got to be looking at. All this other stuff, what's the Fed doing? You know, it crossed my trend line. Stocks are a great bargain. We're going to have a tax cut. You know, all this other crap. The NASDAQ's undervalued. Methinks it's a unrelenting bull because the market's just going to keep going up. It's never... All that stuff doesn't mean anything if this other thing happens. You understand that? All that other stuff doesn't mean anything if this other thing happens. And I'm telling you, I've been around, you know. I have never seen it like this before. I have never seen it like this before. All right? The United States, again, the Senate, those idiot morons in the Senate just came up with new sanctions. New sanctions. Right at the moment when it looked like maybe a dialogue could start. There was a meeting set up between the second in command at the State Department. I forgot this guy, the guy right under Rex Tillerson, and Russia's counterpart. They were going to meet in July. That just got canceled, all right? Because these new sanctions just got slapped on. And I mean, you know, folks, if you know anything about Russian history, you know this falls into the same pattern as all the other past events in that country's history. And let me tell you something, it always, always, always turned out bad for the ones who were pushing Russia and pushing Russia and pushing Russia. Whether that was Napoleon, whether that was Hitler, it doesn't matter who. The ones who were pushing Russia and pushing Russia and pushing Russia, in the end, it always turned out bad for those people. And I don't know what has happened to the United States and what has brought us to this point where we have gotten, you know, in our heads this megalomaniac insanity of dominating and ruling the world and creating empire. But we're screwing with the wrong people here, folks. The wrong people. And it'll take us all down. We might take them down, but let me tell you something. It's going to take us all down. It's going to take us all down. And I'm not being an alarmist here. And I'm not being, you know, I'm not going hyperbolic. All right? But what's happening is bad, and this is what you have to pay attention to. It's very, very serious. Very serious. We are so close right now. So close to one incident happening, all right? After that shoot down of the Syrian jet, the Russians said, that's it. You know, any U.S. plane in our area. And how does the U.S. even say it was in our area? How do you say it's in our area? You don't belong. We don't belong in Syria. What are we doing in Syria? We're not fighting ISIS. We're supporting ISIS, all right? We are not fighting ISIS. We could have taken out ISIS years ago when they got started. We never took them out because we don't want to take them out. We use them as proxy fighters. It's bad, folks. You got to keep your eye on this. I'm telling you. Bye.